Hey there, I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse. And yeah, holiday season's over and the charts turn to crap. And it's Billboard BREAKDOwn. I don't remember. This is rapidly becoming one of, if not the busiest day of the Billboard charting year, and if we're being brutally honest, it shouldn't be. Yes, I'm applauding a selection of new songs taking advantage of the exodus of holiday music. If we're gonna have this bad system encouraging endless holiday recurrency, might as well get something good out of it. But as someone who thinks there shouldn't even be an exception for holiday recurrency at all, let them fight it out like every other song, which would give more late blooming tracks a window to compete and actually make December interesting. Yes, I'm just annoyed with all of this, especially with the reality that all of these new rules didn't really solve Billboard's problems now, didn't they? Especially when a lot of the new arrivals aren't any good. Case in point, the top 10, which are either all gains or returns. And here's where the roots of the problem are. Billboard builds in an exception for whenever a song picks up substantial radio gains to not kick them off the charts, bring them back from recurrency. But following after the removal of holiday music from playlists, every previously charting song in 2025 was gonna see those gains, especially when you factor in radio year-end countdown plays. It's not the only factor because there were some strong hits persisting from last year, but the split here comes between those who are running on longevity versus those who actually have some momentum. So let's start off with two of the former. The Fate of Ophelia by Taylor Swift back up to number 1 thanks to an uptick on streaming and sales, and Golden from K-pop Demon Hunters back up to number 2 with actually better radio and sales but slipping on streaming. This is just playing the margins game as we've normally seen. But then we got Ordinary by Alex Warren returning to the Hot 100 at number 3. Now technically by Billboard's rules, thanks to its radio dominance and strength in both streaming and sales, I guess it should be allowed to be here. But there is a part of me that saw this getting kicked into recurrency a couple weeks back, and I had the fleeting hope that Billboard would stick to their guns and just kind of keep it off, especially when it's now blocking Man I Need by Olivia Dean from getting higher at number 4. It just got muscled back on the radio position battle, but the streaming and the sales, they're really there. Then we got a new arrival to the top 10, Choosin' Texas by Ella Langley at number 5. I can't tell you how huge this is. She dominates sales. Her streaming is huge. This is Nashville appearing to launch a bona fide star into the mainstream. Or at least I would say that if her radio wasn't struggling to get any kind of momentum because of the embarrassing boys club at Music Row never seems to change. There's not even any controversy this time, like with Casey Musgraves. How embarrassing this must be that you're playing the sort of asinine game, not taking advantage of the profits that are right in front of you of such a huge name. Who is taking the advantage appears to be Kalani, who saw the return of Folded up to number 6 thanks to streaming as their radio inertia is kind of slipping. I'm frankly stunned they managed to ride out the holidays altogether. And Back to Friends by Somber at number 7, which actually has better radio but worse streaming at the current moment. Then we saw another bounce back for Opalite by Taylor Swift at number 8. She's getting the streams, but radio is just not in love with this at all. She actually saw some positional losses there. And finally, 2 more returns where I can largely chalk this up to Billboard barely holding to their own guns. Mutt by Leon Thomas at number 9, and Daisies by Justin Bieber at number 10. Thank the radio's refusal to get them dumped, so of course they're in the top 10 now. Now here's where the week turns into a bit of a headache. Outside of new arrivals, we had no losers this week. All the exits were just holiday music. And that means nearly every other song was a gain or a return. And not small ones either, usually by over 20 positions. And while I will list off all the returns this week, it is over a third of the Hot 100, if only for the level set, I'm only gonna highlight the gains that seem to be of notice from other chart shifts, or when it comes to newer tracks with 10 or less weeks in the Hot 100 that might have some tangible momentum. Otherwise, I would just be listing nearly half the charts, and that's not fun nor useful as analysis. So for those gains, let's highlight the ones with continued traction from last week, those being 4 Raws by S-Key Kid up to 38, and Chanel by Tyla up to 53. They're both newer. If all the gunk from last year gets out of the way, they could be a shot to have legit hits. And I might as well mention the loss that rebounded with Eternity by Alex Warren back to 56, and the new arrivals from last week's Seeing Motion, with Phantom by SD Kid and Rico Ace up to 67, and Die on This Hill by Sienna Spiro at 69. I know a lot of folks were not happy at all with my interpretation of that song last week. You should go check out what the artist herself has said about it. It's not pretty. So now for those newer tracks, the big story was FDO by Pooh Shiesty hitting number 12. I thought this had a real shot for the top 10, thank Billboard's frustrating recurrency nonsense. But I also want to highlight Olivia Dean with a couple minutes up to 36. That is a nice touch. Now once you get around or below the top 40, there is some motion, and some of it is really bad, so let's handle those. Favorite country song by Hardy at 42, Cowgirl by Parmalee at 50, that god-awful Traveling Soldier cover by Cody Johnson and his band at 55. Then we got I Thought I Saw Your Face Today by She and Him, actually sticking around at 43. I thought this was coasting on more of a holiday vibes thing. Apparently I was wrong there. Days Like These by Luke Combs at 46. Gone, Gone, Gone by David Guetta, Teddy Swims, and Tones and I at 57. And 3 AM by Low Shimmy and Don Tolliver. I guess those might be the biggest gains that would be relevant and are kind of newer. But now we got our returns. And man, I can't say there's really much quality here either. So let's start off with the one return I did not quite expect. End of Beginning by Dijo at 16. Has this become a staple in some spaces without me noticing? I'm not complaining because the song's fine, and apparently that last Dijo album was actually really good. It just kind of caught me off guard. But a larger story are the holdovers from the Hot 100 last year, which can probably be chalked up at least partially to year-end countdowns. They fall into 3 categories. The first and most exasperating is Morgan Wallen, who had I Got Better at 11 and What I Want with Tate McRae at 19. She also got Nobody's Girl clinging on at 97. And then it's Taylor Swift's big return with Father Figure at 72, Wish List at 73, and Life of a Showgirl with Sabrina Carpenter at 85. Not to worry, Sabrina also brought in Man Child at 18 and When Did You Get Hot at 66. And of course, K-Pop Demon Hunters is not going anywhere yet, so Soda Pop hit 35, Your Idol hit 41, and How It's Done landed at 45. And the rest, look, I don't see a lot of consistency here. It's all over the damn place. On the one hand, I'm not complaining that Love Me Not by Raven Lenae is back at 24, or Olivia Dean getting Nice to Each Other at 74, and Let Alone the One You Love at 78, or Bloodline by Alex Warren and Jelly Roll roaring back at 81. Hell, Jelly Roll got Heart of Stone back at 84. I'll even stick up for Safe by Cardi B and Kalani at 92, and What You Is by Youngboy Never Broke Again and Mellow Rax at 88, or even Voy a Levarte pa Puerto Rico by Bad Bunny at 100. But around those, It Depends by Chris Brown and Bryson Tiller at 17, and No Broke Boys by Disco Lines and Tinashe at 40, Darlin' by Chase Matthew at 68, Gnarly by Cat's Eye at 82, Amor by Anuel Cortez at 90, Fear by NF at 94, and What an Awesome God by Phil Wickham at 96. Yeesh, these are bad. Now the rest, Nice to Meet You by Miles Smith at 26, Beautiful Things by Megan Maroney at 64, Sienna by the Marias at 87, Ends of the Earth by Ty Myers. I got no clue how long any of these are going to last, minus year-end countdown boost or if the radio gains bleed away. This could be a real mess for a bit, we'll have to see. But that draws attention to a pretty stacked list of new arrivals, including a set of songs that flew just shy of an album bomb thanks to a Christmas Day album release that you might have missed. I certainly did. But before we get to those, number 99, Baby Steps by Olivia Dean.
Baby steps. Baby steps.
Well, this was inevitable, as Olivia Dean has been getting more and more songs to chart with what seems like some genuine organic groundswell. We would eventually have to get to the album cut that's probably one of the weakest songs that she's made to date. That does not make it bad. Olivia Dean is still a terrific singer when she's cushioned by the misty multi-tracking with some really nice harmonies and embellishments. The more textured patter of the live percussion against the somber pianos, it is really pleasant in a way, and the bass line is actually more interesting than you would expect. expect. But I think the writing just kind of fails her on this song in this post-breakup recovery. Between comparing herself to a cell phone on low battery that got a jolt from her partner for the stuttered baby steps, it's got this weird feeling of a draft that was made to fill time on the record, piecing together ideas from common things that are around the room, and it makes the song just considerably more mundane, honestly kind of dreary. The main thematic arc and the sound of the song, it works, it's very competent, but it feels undercooked to me. Is this not bad? Not nearly her best. Number 98, Bittersweet by Madison Beer.
I know I should be bitter, but baby, right now I'm bittersweet. I'm getting over what you put me through, and let's say I'm done crying, but baby, I don't lie like you did.
I'll be honest, I expected that we would get a song charting from Madison Beer way before 2025. She's put more time and money into her music career than some might actually remember, going all the way back to the mid-2010s. I reviewed her once before on my main channel for that debut album back in 2021. I didn't care for it, really struggled to identify what made her all that special in comparison with her influences and the ideas that were never fully able to be fleshed out. Now since then, she put out an album in 2023. This is a single from her upcoming project that's apparently dropping in mid-January. And one thing that I mentioned in my first review is that her vocal timbre reminded me a lot of an off-brand Ariana Grande, and that's even more flagrantly obvious here. The breathy timbre, the thick cushion of cooing overdubs, but now with a bunch of the buzzy, saturated synthesizers and grand strings that Ariana Grande flirts with every time she works with The Weeknd, or on singles like We Can't Be Friends, Wait for Your Love, which this feels very close to. Now, to be fair, this is a sound palette I tend to like, and Madison Beer's voice has developed more fullness and presence over the past 5 years. It does fit the wistful regret of this breakup song, which actually had me checking to see if she and LA Chargers quarterback Justin Herbert were still dating. Apparently they are, to the vast fury of social media stans who got way too much time on their hands. At least Justin Herbert won't be distracted for the playoff game. But that's the thing. The song is otherwise so nondescript in its detail describing this breakup and trying to move past it. It has me wondering what really separates Madison Beer from her influences. I'll say it again. She's better at this sound than she used to be, but an underwhelming composition and writing holds it back from being all that striking or unique. I like it more than the majority of Madison Beer music I have heard, but actually remembering it might be a different story. Number 91, Boo by Headman. Yeah, this is the sort of weird shit that happens when you've got little to no competition fighting for new spots at the very beginning of the calendar year. You get songs and acts that seemingly come out of nowhere. Now, for those of you who don't know, and I included myself before this, apparently Headman's out of Louisiana. He put out a project in 2022 called Landlord, okay? And this has apparently gone a bit viral as a standalone single. And, okay, the first comparison that came to mind was Young Boy Never Broke Again, with a bit of a sharper delivery, but my first actual reaction was, oh dear God, who told him that nasal yet tinny synthesizer should be allowed in public, alongside the rinky-dink piano and some truly woeful mixing? Why is the vocal so quiet when this is probably going to be intended as your breakthrough? Because, and this is what later shot me, I don't think he's a bad rapper. His flow is good. I like the horror movie references, and he's trying to play up this southern spook house vibe. This kind of would be the way to do it, even if you dig a little bit deeper and it seems like your standard trappings for a stock steal your girl and threaten people on my come up song. It feels more amateurish than outright awful, the sort of thing you hear in a local scene that kind of only blows up because of raw coincidence. But if you got the right people and tweaks around him, he could be at least decent. That's kind of true with a lot of local acts. I mean, it's not great by any means, but I heard a little potential, even if the odds of him going anywhere beyond this might be next to zero. That's kind of scary. Number 89, Who Knows by Daniel Caesar.
Perhaps I am a coward, hiding in a disguise of an ever-giving flower.
And speaking of potential, I remember watching the fallout of Daniel Caesar effectively writing himself out of some R&B discourse in 2019 with the Yes Jules incident. That was back when I followed way too much of the Joe Budden podcast, so unfortunately I remember way more of this than any decent person should, where his Jordan Peterson references were, if anything, more revealing to me. Now, since then, he got a #1 working with Justin Bieber on Peaches, but his solo career has been spotty, with the reviews seeming to highlight that his production and arrangements remain pretty gorgeous, but the writing has been mixed, to say the least. This is from his 2025 album, Son of Spurgy, which has attracted some attention from blending in more elements of gospel into R&B, and while I don't quite hear a lot of gospel outside so much as some brittle acoustic R&B with some wispy guitar phrases and flattened synths at the back, it certainly cultivates a pleasant enough atmosphere, albeit one that doesn't quite feel as blissful as it's trying to be. The synth doesn't quite blend, and the song never seems to build much swell. But then there's Daniel Caesar himself. I'm not sure why he's opting for that frail, husky delivery that ignores his richer lower register that I actually like, but the writing is about trying to win over some lover to get married, maybe settle down, yet can't muster any credible conviction. If you're opening up your song talking about how it could be a waste of time or you're gonna screw it up, capped off with a shrugging, who knows, where he is openly admitting his cowardice and a precarious future because he can't calculate all the possibilities, even if the point is to show more vulnerability, actually bring her in, the song also shows astounding weakness, which makes any of the attempts to show love feel really clumsy and indecisive. I'd almost say he's setting himself to fail in his own mind, where if it doesn't go his way, he can just shrug his shoulders and be comfortable having thought himself out of making a decision. Well, speaking from experience, this is the sort of inner monologue that's both profoundly unattractive, but again, sets you up to fail. I want to hear the tenderness in that final confession of love. If he keeps it inside, it might be enough, but that would also require a level of maturity that the rest of the writing simply does not have. And from what I've heard about the album, that's sadly consistent. So yeah, it turns out some people tell you who they are early and often. I should not be as disappointed in this as I kind of am, and that sucks. Number 86, Leviticus by Suicide Boys.
All this pain and suffering, I lost count, I can't add it up. Fighting off demons one by one, but now the legions of them coming from the ceiling, cause I got washed clean in Christ's blood.
So when I saw a song by the goddamn Suicide Boys with this title, I thought it had to be a reference or taking the piss, or at least I hoped it would be. For those of you who don't know, this is the third book in the Christian Bible, predominantly written to chronicle the Jewish laws post-Exodus under Moses, reportedly received from God on high directly, and the majority of which surround a lot of sacrifice and purity, what is holy and what is unclean until evening. The majority of Christians I know who have actually read Leviticus don't remotely take it seriously or as gospel, pun only partially intended, but it can be a fascinating, if woefully antiquated document of historical temple rites. And that might have been giving Suicide Boys way too much credit that they're talking about that. It's more likely called that because they had a song called Exodus, and this might be a sequel to it, or that Ruby was playing Red Dead Redemption at some point and named the song after the character in the game, with the bricked out bass swamping the mix with the operatic vocals around the trap percussion and the stormy sounds as they go off at length, spouting a lot of faux holy proclamations of violent crusade, raise them out of chaos so they can die in martyrdom, as they then try to sell by sounding as twisted and malevolent as possible. Okay, I've been reticent on the Christian arc of Suicide Boys for a while now, but this is the first point where I feel openly hostile. It's trying to juxtapose being edgy with holy war framing, the sort of thing you hear from Groyper types that doesn't remotely correspond to anything Jesus actually said, so much as trying to get reincarnated for this badass form so they can fight and die. And it's a truly awful vibe that a track barely running 2 minutes doesn't even seem like it's got enough material to sell. I get the impression that I'm probably taking this way more seriously than the duo themselves are, at least I hope that's the case, but this is precisely the worst note to go off on, and it doesn't feel competent enough to take it beyond sloganeering. So I'm left thinking that it's either intentionally targeting that audience, or they're not aware enough to see the implication. Either way, it really sucks. Next. Number 83, Brunette by Tucker Wetmore.
Climbed up in a full drive that's lifting. Never been fishing, never been mudding. Gotta be one that done remind me of you there beside me. I need to find me a Brunette.
So I guess so long as Morgan Wallen keeps on charting songs, his rip-offs are going to be active and trying to capitalize. So here's Tucker Wetmore, following his poorly produced 2024 run with a new song that first dropped last April. And yet I was more reminded initially of Tyler Hubbard the first time I heard this, because it sounds like the sour flip of 5'9", where the raw-looking acoustics have been swapped out for a faster electric gallop, as Tucker Wetmore is trying to replace his blonde ex with a brunette who's more innocent and has never been exposed to some of that outback country life. She's never been mudded. And I'll be honest, this at least sounded a bit better mixed and balanced than I expected, with a deeper sense of some smoky atmosphere. There's actually a hook and enough tempo here to give this some scuzzy meat. It's the rare song that barely runs 2 minutes and kind of makes the most of its runtime. But man, it's hard to like this when it takes everything in Tyler Hubbard's bro country list-driven formula for the cheapest possible replacement and commodification. He just needs a girl to fill that space that feels like the stark opposite of his ex. It just feels painfully ugly, and yeah, that's also intentional, but it isn't so much of a righteous rebound as this embittered, I'll take whatever I can get, but she needs to be all of these things along the way. I mean, it's a tough one for me to like. I kind of like the tempo. The hook is sharp. I like the wailing electric guitar flourishes. There's some atmosphere, and maybe there's some nostalgia for 5'9", where I can imagine the darker flip kind of working. But man, this is walking a knife's edge of pulling it off or just being insufferable. And when it feels this economically packaged, I don't think there's enough here. Definitely could tip either way. We might have to see on this one. Number 80, It Won't Be Long by George Birge.
But it won't be long.
If your charting career is based on a convenient gap in the schedule where there is no competition, like it's been for George Birge for 2 years in a row now, where I don't think I would remember the songs in question if you tested me, that does not bode well. So suffice to say, I had rock bottom expectations for this, especially as the song first dropped about a year ago, around the last time he charted a song from another previous year. But to his credit, this falls closer to the territory of the tasteful material where the bros tried to import more wisdom, which can often feel a little trite or try-hard, but occasionally lands on a decent sentiment. And to Birge's credit, I actually think he does. Talking more about how life can just move way too fast, especially as you get older, so might as well take chances before it all passes you by. I think this actually works way better than trying to oversell attitude or machismo he can't back up, with some touches of piano and strings. And I like some of the details that don't explicitly describe what's happening, but you can infer what stage of life he's in. It's decent poetry, where that old wisdom from his father becomes something that he can pass down to his grown son who's becoming a father himself. It's not reinventing the wheel by any means, but with the production largely ditching the more synthetic elements that didn't work, it just sounds more consistently organic, and that kind of works for the subject matter. So where I would normally forget George Birge exists entirely, I'm gonna call this a good song. Wouldn't mind it lasting more than a week. We'll see. Number 79, Backpack Boys by Peso, Pluma, and Tito Double P.
Yo mi identidad, balas traigo y por un lado mi carnal, hierbemos de cultivar.
Genuine question. Christmas Day. If you do not speak Spanish or keep an eye on the corrido scene, did you check for this collab album between Peso, Pluma, and Tito Double P? Did you even know it existed? I'm not trying to be a smartass here. I think I heard about it once in passing, but even the few favorable reviews I've seen seem to emphasize it's a side venture more than most, playing to some very familiar territory in this sound. So I'm gonna try to keep my coverage of the 4 songs that we have here pretty quick. Starting off one that's actually the album closer, but apparently has been around in some form for the past couple of years as a Peso Pluma solo track. They've augmented it with a more polished arrangement and some delicate delicate pianos and gospel vocal overdubs, and they don't remotely fit at all as soon as the trumpet starts farting all over the mix, nor really with Tito Double P's more nasal squawking. Now, to be fair, I get why they're actually here on a song that's all about celebrating the success of the come-up, and Peso Pluma's production is more elaborate and refined than most in the scene these days. But the clashing timbre, or how the writing keeps referencing brand name flexing and selling weed, feels increasingly jarring to pull it all together. Once you get past that, maybe if you're a longtime fan, this might mean more. It doesn't do it for me. Number 77, Zoo by Shakira.
Can't be tamed, and we're turning the floor into a zoo. Come on, keep it up. It's fun if you're down to play, and we're turning the floor into a zoo.
Longtime fans of mine, you know I'm a Shakira fan, so much so that I've given her probably a pass for too much the past 15 years, mostly because her vocal charisma is on a different level. But one place where I didn't do that was in 2016 when she contributed the Zootopia track Try Everything. It was co-written by Sia. I thought it sucked back then. Naturally, she's back for the sequel with a song co-written with Ed Sheeran. I wish I was kidding. And some of this comes down with settling expectations. I get that Shakira is a global superstar, but the commercial pablum feels like the most sanitized and boring version of what she could be. And I don't know how you can listen to this and hear a more annoying and clunky version of Waka Waka with Ed Sheeran's slightly overwritten patter with more textured percussion that characterize songs like Shape of You, a song I still like so long as I can ignore how every other flourish he has made in this scene is mostly embarrassing. That repeated hop-ah on the chorus, along with how every syllable is drawn out, it's so staccato and grating, not helped by the drum texture feeling weirdly undercooked on the verses and pre-chorus as the melody's been left in this hazy background, even if the production's got a little bit more texture than you would expect from Disney these days. But on the topic of lyrics, putting aside the can't be tamed reference, which I'm naturally assuming is referring to Miley Cyrus, if nothing else, as someone who has seen neither Zootopia movie, I can't be the only one who sees a bit of the irony of Shakira trying to encourage all these animals to run free, turn the dance floor into a zoo, you know, where animals are famously wild and free of confinement. In any case, I got no idea how well this is gonna do. Depending on how much cultural penetration / chart stagnation there is, it could become a hit. Disney has some of that. I really goddamn hope it doesn't. Number 76, Ni Pedo by Peso Pluma and Tito Double P.
Voy sin nada, otra vez que entrego todo mi amor y otra vez que me das la espalda.
Okay, this works better for me. It's still more glossy and polished, especially with the heavier vocal overdubs, but I like the commiseration of the writing, where both men have gotten dumped and they're clearly not over it. They're just passing the bottle back and forth to try to untangle / wallow in their feelings. And I'm trying to untangle why I like it more. Some of this feels like the acoustic line landing a more slick melodic idea. There's more going on. Some of it just being those more polished overdubs, which blend a little bit better with the tragicomic vibe on display, where the horns and the more exaggerated performances make a little bit more sense. But it also doesn't feel as lightly toxic as some of these sorts of songs can be. Maybe because they're so drunk that they're not even angry, just sloppily romantic and wanting to sing about it. So yeah, against all odds, I kind of like this too. Let's move on to number 75, Dano by Peso Pluma and Tito Double P.
Que me dejará, de mí ya no quiere nada, que está cansada, muy agotada y que a la chingada.
You know, maybe it's all those softer, feminine vocal overdubs that convinced them that this would work coming out on Christmas. There is something that feels like if you're multiple drinks in around the holidays, the florid, messy attempts at romance could potentially work. But while the production feels increasingly lavish, the actual moment where a lonely fervor Peso Pluma includes the call to the girl in question who blows him off with an eye roll as they just repeat the word translated as damage, I mean, it goes past self-aware tragedy and starts treading right up to obnoxious, especially when the melodrama feels so amplified, especially with the dramatic slowdown for the outro. I certainly hear and understand the appeal of all this, but it feels more direct and less sharp as a result. Ergo, I'm less impressed. Number 65, Stay Country or Die Tryin' by Blake Shelton.
On the wall in the barn where the magnolias bloom, there's a lamp on the lawn where your buddy and your both got the name John.
Okay, I'm not normally the guy to tell someone what they can or cannot make music about. That's a real slippery slope when it comes to artistic expression. But after the absolute turd that was Texas dropped last spring, I'm not surprised that this took a while to get here and piss me off going off of title alone. Not only did I think you were retired, Blake Shelton, I mean, there was an album in 2025, there was precisely one reaction to it on YouTube, sure as hell no reviews, but in what universe does the Nashville industry dude, who's more known nowadays publicly for being on The Voice and married to Gwen Stefani, who didn't even write this song, think that he could try and sell this over-posturing nonsense? And if you think I'm being hypocritical as the one guy who actually liked God's Country way too much back in 2019 because it sounded like a Chris Stapleton song jacking the chords of Brooks and Dunn's Brand New Man, well, you haven't heard this crap, which is full of these soupy southern rock guitar chords and touches of fiddle, but a lot of overcompressed backing vocals and whooshing effects stolen from Jordan Davis in the mid-2010s. They shatter any kind of atmosphere. And with all the overwrought over-singing, I can't remotely buy in. But then there's the lyrics, which are the same sort of checklist of backroads country cliches. Not only do I not buy some boots that never seen Easy Street, or that he's a working man from the Boondocks, coming from Blake Shelton of all people, with a Bible and almanac on the shelf. What era are you even trying to sell this from? Then there's the line on the hook, "In God we trust, Detroit we rust." Because that's what your patriotic country boy jam needs. A bad rhyme reflecting on the export of American auto jobs overseas. Now, there was a time I would have been disappointed, but at this point, it feels like farce. Who the hell wants this from Blake Shelton in 2026? Because even if the dudes who might like this sort of posturing, they don't want to hear it without grit. Certainly not from a Music Row lifer who barely even writes his own music. This apparently was dropped off the album last April. The only reason it's charting now is that Blake Shelton to play a parody of himself, I guess. I almost wish it was taking the piss. This is humiliatingly bad, y'all. And Blake Shelton, for the love that's all that's holy, stop being country and really just stop trying. Number 63, Such a Funny Thing by Sabrina Carpenter.
I love you. Forgetting me more every day. It gets me every time.
So after the remarkably successful run of the bonus tracks off of Short and Sweet, I'm honestly a bit surprised it took so long for a bonus cut from Man's Best Friend to start making the rounds. And while I've not been a fan at all of Jack Antonoff's production with Sabrina Carpenter, I was a little bit more curious than I thought I would be about this. I don't like Man's Best Friend at all, but it certainly provoked more thought from me this past year, and the bonus cuts are often where the cutting room floor ideas wound up. Maybe it'd be interesting. And with this, honestly, I think I like it a little bit more than a lot of Man's Best Friend, and mostly because some of the tone feels a bit more apropos, at least in the writing. The guy appears to be seeking space, distancing himself with a string of bullshit excuses, so we're watching the breakup happen in real time. And while Sabrina tries to deflect it by saying, "Oh, he's got such a funny way of behaving," it's a sad sarcasm of knowing exactly what's happening. It's all ending, and it's not overplayed for it. But this is where Jack Antonoff's production lands straight in the uncanny valley for me. It's too rickety and brittle to tilt straight to over-the-top melodrama, especially with how canned the vocal lead and the percussion sounds, but it still attempts all these grand embellishments with these horns and strings as the song progresses, and I get there's a certain camp to the performance, but if she had kept this in the silky, understated early 80s yacht rock, pop country textures, instead of a bunch of 60s inspired Baroque touches, it may have landed more for me. So, look, no, I'm not some big, huge Sabrina Carpenter hater. I just recognize very sharply where her formula stumbles for me. And this really should be better than it is. All I'm saying. Number 52, Dopamina by Peso, Pluma, and Tito Double P.
Ya me domina con la mopa encima entra la puta tentación.
El modo de mi intención, vestir vestido de marca fina. La neta las niñas mi adicción me elevan la dopamina.
Okay, so this was the one that folks were saying was a little bit more unique within the new formula, of which I'm not sure I buy when I translate the lyrics. I miss all the flexing. It's about this super hot women from around the globe that apparently love these guys with the brand name and the lavish boasting, as if we haven't heard that before. Now, to their credit, the faster rollicking patter of the acoustic line that's echoed by the trumpet is catchier than I would usually expect. You can tell the songcraft is a bit more sharp and trying to be immediate, where Tito Double P's ravenous energy has some tangible charisma. But after the hook, the song's got the feel of throwing a lot of ideas at the wall as quickly as they can muster them, down to the cooing overdubs that occasionally punch in. Just doesn't feel as deliberately paced as Ni Pedo, and I would argue that this is pretty good as well, it's just not quite as strong. I gotta wonder what this will all reflect of the corrido scene and the popularity in the United States. They've had consistent charting presence the past couple of years midway down the charts, a little more under the radar, but lasting a lot longer than you might expect. And I've heard the polish and growth with time. I liked more of this than I thought I would. Really not sure it's gonna last out the holiday season, but at least for now, maybe worth checking out, if you're curious. And finally, number 21, What You Saying by Lil Uzi Vert.
And she got it done, like the way she forms. And she gon' perform it, look the same in morning. She don't stop, keep going. I don't even know what she said, but this what I hear in my head.
So apparently Uzi's got a project coming. It's hard to glean what we're ultimately gonna wind up getting, and I'm really struggling to build up enough momentum to care. As someone who's reviewed multiple Lil Uzi Vert projects, they hit a steep low with Eternal Take in 2024. I don't even think the fans like that. But there's still enough of a star that this single drew some attention, their best chart debut since Endless Fashion with Nicki Minaj, and I'm not quite sure how to react to this one. For one, it's liberally sampling a really pretty French singer-songwriter Indila from 2014 with an elegant strings orchestral flip and even her vocal passage dropped over the song, which certainly gives the track a little bit more grandeur for Uzi's producer to clumsily drop a bassy Jersey club flip that barely synchronizes with that melody, and where Uzi's choppy ad-libs and breathy confusion feels even sloppier. It gets close to somewhat working on the single verse of this song barely running for 2 minutes, and even then, I'm not impressed. Mostly because Uzi's not remotely equipped to have bars that can match this. If the main conceit of your bragging is that she's so hot, but you don't speak the language, congrats, welcome to Jason Derulo's Talk Dirty, and yet they suspect it's only because they're wealthy and looking for a one-night stand, I'm not hearing what's so attractive that she would want to do more, especially when you end your hook by not even trying to understand her, but implying this is what I think she's talking about in my head. So it's all about self-gratification. Nah, this feels like passport bro projection. And then even if Lil Uzi Vert is certainly made worse, I don't find this appealing nor interesting. And Uzi hasn't really had the flair or bombast to hook me in for years now. It's certainly different than a lot of what's charting. I'll give Uzi points for continuing to try and add more to the Jersey Club formula post Just Wanna Rock. But man, precious little else. Can't really endorse this. And that's our week. Yes, way too long, and a lot of it was bad. Worst is going to Leviticus by Suicide Boys for being some undercooked pseudo-religious dreck, and yes, that is an insult. And given the audience I think it's targeting, it's a lot more revealing. I'm going to go for a tie for dishonorable mention between Stay Country or Die Tryin by Blake Shelton or Zoo by Shakira. One for being hilariously bad, hysterically even, the other for being brain-crushingly annoying, and Daniel Caesar got off lucky. As for the best, I can't believe I'm saying this, George Birge at least has a good song here with It Won't Be Long, with Peso, Pluma, and Tito Double P getting the honorable mention for Ni Pedo. I would be surprised, except they were credibly competing with Sabrina, Carpenter, and Tucker Wetmore for the spot. Wow. Next week, hopefully a little bit more breathing room as everything settles in. We will have to see. But until then, I'm Mark. You're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse. And I'll see you next time.